Okay, Deborah. Så
Thank you.
varsågod, då får du ta över.
Thank you.
Den tiden på.
Yeah, okay. So, hi everybody. I think we're going to have this workshop as a kind of Swinglish, because as I understand it, you're all trying to learn Swedish, but maybe English is the easier language to understand. So I'm going to show all my slides in Swedish, and I'm going to talk English and maybe repeat a little bit in Swedish as well. So we'll manage our way through this together. The title of this workshop, Jag är inte galen, jag är bara inte som du, it means I'm not crazy, I'm just not you. And I think it's a great statement for a way of leading into all the misunderstandings that happen with communication. That we tend to expect people to be like us, and behave like us, and communicate like us, and when they don't, we kind of get a bit confused. And this is actually the title of a book, not written by me. I have my book here for you later, but this is a book which is all about different styles of communication. So it can be something for you to look up if you want to. I'd like to start by getting to know all of you. So we're going to go round the room, and I'm going to ask each of you your name and what you hope to get out of this workshop today, so that I can adjust my content. So may I start here?
I'm Lydia from Cameroon.
Yes.
I came to this house to learn more about communication and social network.
Okay. Yeah, good, thank you.
My name is Nurdan. I'm from Turkey. I'm very interested in your speech and conference because I like to find out some tips or some little hints for me about the Swedish way of life, Swedish way of communication.
Yes.
The Swedish style of communication.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Nahla. I am from Sudan, and my job in my homeland was with customers. So I know how much is it important to deal with people with different backgrounds, different personalities, and it's very important. You can make a big deal, you can make a big sales during the communications.
Yes, good, thank you.
My name is Alma. I'm from Kazakhstan. And I'm very interested in this course, in this today's course, because I would like to extend my networking and to get more contacts, just to develop my business.
Okay, good, thank you. Yes?
My name is Ragat Karawati. I was an English teacher and also Arabic teacher because I graduated from Arabic literature and English literature.
Okay.
But I was, beside my work, I was a volunteer in the Red Cross for 9 years, basically in the community sector, like social work. And then I joined the UNHCR, and my main focus in work was about women empowerment, and also I dealt with SGBV, sexual and gender-based violence cases. I now have the trend of like, yes, humanitarian work, but through women development, to like enable them to have a decent life, and psychologically and also professionally.
Yes.
So I understand the importance of the communication in my work, and I need to have the right approach for the Swedish way of Swedish communication.
Yes, yeah, good, thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie. I am from Colombia, and as a marketing professional, I would like to learn how business works in Sweden, how are the different tools they use, the culture and everything that relate with marketing in Sweden. So I really think this is a really good way for me to find out those things.
Okay, good, thank you. Yes.
Henadi Okan heter jag. Jag kommer från Syrien. Jag har...
Vi kan ta det på svenska om det är lättare för dig. Vill du prata svenska?
Ja.
Ja? Eller engelska?
Jag pratar svenska.
Svenska, ja. Det gör vi.
Jag heter Henadi Okan. Jag kommer från Syrien. Jag studerar i arkitektassistenter och jag jobbar som frisör.
Okej. Thank you.
Hej, jag heter Emma. Jag kommer från Matilda. Jag jobbar ekonomi och business. Jag driver företag i mitt land på 20 år. Och nu jag vill göra samma sak i Sverige. Jag vill göra mer och diffundera i Sverige. Ekonomi och jag vill hitta rätt företag för mig.
Ja.
Mycket bra.
Jättebra. Okay. Good. Tack så mycket. Thank you. Okay, so I'm Deborah Madsen Clark. I was born in England and I moved to Sweden more than 20 years ago. My background is in communication psychology. But I'm going to go further back than that. When my interest in cross-cultural communication started, I was 18 years old and I was sitting at home one day and my father had been working in the garden of a local church. And while he was there, a man came and was looking for the priest. And the priest wasn't there, so my father said, "I'm not a priest, I'm a gardener, but can I help you?" And the man said, "Yes, I've just come back from Africa and I have an 18-year-old girl with me and she's crying and she's freezing and I don't know what to do." So my father said, "Don't worry, I've got one of those at home," an 18-year-old girl. "I'll send her over." So he came home and said, "Here's the address, go and do what you can." So I arrived in the house and of course there was this poor girl missing her family, very cold, crying, and we started to communicate. She couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak her language, so we communicated with photographs of our families, and that started a friendship which we still have today. And I'm godmother to one of her sons and we still keep in touch. And for me it was a really interesting start in, if there's goodwill in communication, we can always find a way to communicate together. So that's one of the things we're going to look at today, is how do we create really good communication in situations which may seem sometimes impossible. Hi. Okay. So, this is a little bit my story. I studied communication psychology, på svenska kommunikationspsykologi. Started to work at the BBC in the UK, and then some publishing and media companies, and discovered that I like developing people more than developing products. So I was producing books and magazines, but it was the people that were more interesting. And so I worked my way through my career, changed from being in charge of product development to being in charge of people development. And the first program I developed was called Culture, Communication and Change. And I'm going to show you why in a moment. I focus on really leadership development, corporate communication, change management and conflict resolution, and really trying to build bridges between people as much as I can. These are some of the companies that I've worked for. IKEA, Tetra Pak. SUS is the Skånes University Hospital. And I've been in Middle East, Asia, Europe, Scandinavia, US and UK. So I've been very fortunate to have the challenge of communicating with lots of different people. So what we're going to do is look a little bit at basic communication processes, så grundläggande kommunikationsprocess. Lite kring mottagarförståelse, how do we reach the receiver and help them to understand? And then PRISM-modell, det är en modell som kan tillämpa bra kommunikation. So it's a model that you'll get to take away with you to practice that will help in planning communication. So, this is really what made me change from product development to people development, was when I heard somebody in my team say, it will all be fine when they do it my way. Allt kommer att bli bra när de gör det på mitt sätt. And what I saw was that when people are stressed, they only see their way of doing things. They only see their way of communicating. The other thing I saw was how two people sitting in offices next to each other, one had everything perfectly tidy, the other one had a big mess. And when someone asked them both, why does your office look tidy? Why does your office look messy? They both had the same answer. One said, well, I have to have it tidy here because I travel all the time. And the other one said, it's impossible for me to have it tidy because I travel all the time. So what that taught me is that people justify their natural way of being based on the situation. Vi motiverar vårt naturliga sätt att vara baserat på situationen. Han är inte vår typ, han passar inte in här. He's not our sort, he doesn't fit in here. This I heard a lot. People often employ people who are like themselves. And so the challenge is to help people to understand the value of employing people that aren't like themselves. So this is the basic communication process, grundläggande kommunikationsprocess. Och så har vi här sändare, the sender in the communication, and mottagare, the person who's receiving the communication. And the bit in the middle here is the message, meddelande. When somebody communicates something as a sender, they have an intention. Så sändare har ett avsikt när de kommunicerar. The receiver has some kind of effect on them when they receive that message. Så det finns någon effekt som påverkar mottagare. Man kan säga det är som kodning och avkodning, precis som en dator. Coding and decoding. So when I do this with IT companies, they love this terminology, coding and decoding. So they say, so we're all the same hardware, but we have different software. So that kind of explains it for them. But there's a lot of things that get in the way here. What do you think they might be? Vad är det som förstör den här? Att när en sändare försöker kommunicera någonting till mottagare, vad är det som gör så att mottagare tar inte emot det på det sättet som sändare har?
Yeah, they have like filters, sometimes culture, mood. Somebody have a background idea.
Yes,
so
yes.
There's stuff like that.
Yeah.
Filters.
Yes, filters, a lot of filters.
Or maybe are nervous.
Or nervous, yes, yeah, the mood they're in, yeah. Prejudice.
Previous experiences.
Yes, yeah, good.
Culture.
Stereotyping sometimes.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Gender, status, age.
Yes, many different things. Så när man tänker på alla saker som förstör detta, så man beundrar att någon kommunicerar överhuvudtaget. When you think about all the things that can get in the way here, it's amazing we ever communicate with each other, actually. Let's have a little look at some of the things that we've identified here. Historia, the history between people. Some of you have mentioned that. So if I've worked with Tatiana previously and it's gone really well, or she represents a company or a culture that I have really good experiences with, even if she doesn't communicate very well, I'm going to be positive. There's going to be goodwill there. But if Tatiana and I have worked together previously and it's not gone so well, or she represents a company or a culture that I have a bad experience of, then even if she communicates perfectly, I'm probably not going to take it in a good way. So history is very important, history between people. And when I do this in companies, I really encourage people to never allow a negative history to build up between people. You know, if you can feel that happening, then just pick up the phone and try to sort it out. Språk, language, of course. And with that, I don't just mean if someone is talking English or Swedish or German or French. We also have a kind of language that we get used to in a company that we work with or in our families, kind of shortenings of words and small ways of communicating. Just out of interest, do you know how much of a message we receive through just the words? Hur mycket av ett budskap får vi bara genom ord?
10%.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make some comment. Then in my research, I worked with blind people.
Yes.
And the blind person told me once that through the conversation with the person, this newly arrived person, the blind person can say what the status of this person, educational level, and even profession.
Just through the voice?
Yes. With the language.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And I've had a similar experience with an aunt who was deaf. She could tell exactly what someone was thinking by their facial expression, the way they were communicating. She always knew if someone was sad or happy. Yeah. So yes, it's about 10%. Det är ungefär 10% av budskapet som vi tar emot bara genom att lyssna på ord. So what's the rest made up of?
Body language.
Yeah, tone of voice and body language. Those are the two things that make up the rest. That's quite scary when you think how much communication we do via email. När man tänker på hur mycket man kommunicerar via att bara skriva några ord. Så då förlorar man röstläge och kroppsspråk. We lose the body language and the voice tone. How many of you have young teenagers in your life? So you notice how they communicate via text message all the time? But they've had to replace body language and tone of voice. What do? Icons. Yes. Man måste ersätta röstläge och kroppsspråk på något sätt. Så då använder man sådana små symboler när man skickar ett meddelande. Så det är bevis på att vi måste ha kroppsspråk och röstläge. We must have the tone of voice and the body language. Then we have the medium or the channel. Vilken kanal väljer man att kommunicera? Det påverkar hur mottagare tar emot budskapet från sändare. It affects how the receiver receives the message from the sender, which channel that we use. And we all tend to choose the channel we like best. So if we like sending emails, we send emails. If we like talking in the phone, we pick up the phone. If we like having face-to-face meetings, we do that. But maybe that's not what the receiver likes best. Så vi kanske behöver anpassa oss lite mer till vilken kanal tycker mottagare om. Which channel does the receiver like? När jag jobbade på sjukhuset i Lund med undersköterska, ledningen där tyckte att de skulle skicka ut information till undersköterska via email. So when I worked in the hospital in Lund, the management there thought they could communicate with the nurses via email. How often does a nurse have time to sit down and check their emails in a typical day? Almost never. So the management were using the wrong channel to reach the nurses. Values and culture, some of you were talking about that. I'm going to give you some examples of some cultural mistakes. Val av tidpunkt, what time do we choose to communicate with someone? How often do you hear a sender say to a receiver, are you receptive? Hur ofta hör man en sändare säga till mottagare, är du mottaglig?
I never heard that.
No. We just do it when we feel like it. And people just do it to us when they feel like it. So it's not strange that messages get lost. Det är inte konstigt att man förlorar väldigt mycket. Brist på kunskap, det betyder att man kanske vet inte vilket ämne vi pratar om. We don't really understand the topic. So then the receiver can't understand what the sender is saying. And expectations, förväntningar. Jag har ett eget exempel av förväntningar. Jag lärde mig att köra bil i centrala London. I learned to drive a car in the middle of London. And when I took my test, I was sure I had failed. Totally sure I'd failed. And the driving examiner said to me in a tone of voice that was completely flat, completely negative, I'm happy to tell you you passed. And his voice tone and my expectations meant that I had no idea what he said. Så jag som mottagare kunde inte ta emot budskapet för att jag hade andra förväntningar och han hade en väldigt platt röstläge. So when he left the car, I sat there for about 10 minutes thinking, how shall I get home? I can't drive. And then it started to come through. Other example of expectations, I've worked in a company where I listened to Swedish and Italian people speaking. Är det någon som har erfarenhet av svenska och italienare när de pratar?
Yeah, you had yes, I heard Italian talk and the Swedish talk. Italian, they're talking so much.
Exactly, yes.
And loud.
And loud, yeah. So it was actually a British man that told me this, so I can't take credit for it myself, but he told me, you watch and listen. He said, the Italians have an expectation that if someone has understood what they're saying, or is interested or engaged, the person will interrupt. The Swedes assume that if you've understood what they've said and you're interested and engaged, you will be quiet until they're finished. So when you put Swedes and Italians together, you have a very interesting mixture, because the more the Italians talk, the quieter the Swedes get, and the quieter the Swedes get, the more the Italians talk, because they think, they haven't understood, I have to repeat the message again and again until they've got it. So it's an interesting dynamic. So if we just go back one to this, I'm going to give you an example of where I've seen this go wrong, and then I'm going to ask you to work in pairs and discuss your own examples. Så jag ska prata igenom ett exempel och sen så vill jag att ni jobbar 2 och 2 och diskuterar egna exempel av när detta har inte fungerat. Okay, so my example is I was working with another British woman in Sweden. She'd never been to Sweden before. And we had some lunch. We went out for lunch with a Swedish group. And I asked her, what would you like to drink? And she said, I'd like a glass of wine, please. Now, I'm sure you know enough about Swedish culture now to know that on a Tuesday lunchtime when you're working, you don't drink wine in Sweden, okay? So when she said, I'd like a glass of wine, please, the whole Swedish group kind of went, they didn't say anything, but there was a reaction in their bodies that she'd said the wrong thing. We ate lunch, she didn't drink her wine. So when we went back to the conference room, I said, was the wine not good? And she said, oh, it was okay, but I don't normally drink at lunchtime. But last week I was in Italy, and when they offered me a glass of wine, I said no, and they were really offended. Så hon hade gjort ett kulturellt misstag 2 gånger. För att i Italien så hade hon sagt nej, och sen i Sverige hade hon sagt ja. Utan att förstå. If we think about that, what could I have already done as a sender to help her? I could have said, what would you like to drink? Water or light beer? Jag skulle ha hjälpt henne och begränsat hennes val från början och sagt, vad vill du ha att dricka, vatten eller lättöl? What could she have done as a receiver to avoid that situation? Instead of just saying what she wanted, she could have said, what are you having? Hon kunde ha sagt, vad ska du dricka? Och tagit samma sak, had the same thing. So the point is, we take things for granted when we communicate. Vi alltid tar för givet att det finns lika värderingar, och då gör vi misstag. Så hon gjorde ett misstag, jag gjorde ett misstag. Vems ansvar är detta? Om budskapet inte kommer fram till en mottagare, vems ansvar är det? Whose responsibility is it if the message isn't received by the sender, by the receiver in the way the sender has intended?
Sender's responsible. Both of them.
Mm. Yeah, it's 50-50. Mm. But I often hear senders saying, I've told them. I sent an email. I've explained it. Well, if the receiver hasn't received it, then you haven't communicated. Om mottagare har inte tagit emot det, så har ni inte kommunicerat bara för att ni har skickat ett email eller sagt det. But I also often hear receivers saying, oh, I was at the meeting but I didn't understand. Okej. Mottagare kan inte sitta där och säga, nej, jag förstår inte. Men har ett ansvar att gå tillbaka till sender, go back to the sender and say, could you explain that to me one more time? So when I work with companies, I try to get both sides in a communication to take equal responsibility, to make sure that the sender actually uses the right language, chooses the right channel, takes into account all of these things. So, I'd like you to pair up and discuss your own examples. Så sitter 2 och 2 och diskuterar egna exempel av när ni har upplevt att budskapet har inte kommit fram på grund av sändare eller mottagare eller båda två. So, jag vill jättegärna höra lite exempel. I'd love to hear some of your examples. If someone would be prepared to share.
I can share.
Yes? Okay, let's just wait till everyone's finished. Yes? You can stand. Okay. So, vi ska lyssna lite på ett exempel här. Mm.
My question is from my experience working as a volunteer. I was volunteering during 4 years with Association of Blind in Helsingborg, and I was traveling a lot. And once, when it was at the beginning of my volunteering experience, it was a first 5 days trip to the resort. And I was escorting blind women. And it was escorting time for first time for a long time, see? And I tried to do my best. I just ran around her name was Susan, and saying, Susan, here's your bag. Susan, here's your coat. Susan, don't forget this and this and this and this. And we were, at the beginning, very good friends. And then, in 2 hours, I had a feeling that something is happening? Because she just stopped to talk to me, just saying yes, no, yeah, no communication. And I was so just like, what is I'm doing wrong? And during lunchtime, when Susan went to sleep, I met with another escort person. Her name was Marie, and Marie was escorting blind people during 24 years. And I talked to Marie, what is happening? I'm doing everything, but Susan is not glad. She's not satisfied. And Marie told me, never run before blind person to help. Just wait until blind person asks for help. And after that, this rule helped me to communicate.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Yeah, and it's a very good example that we often we make an assumption. We assume that someone wants help when maybe they don't want help, and it's really nice if we ask them first or they ask us first. Good. Any more examples? Anyone like to share? Yes.
In Malmo Festival, usually, they have different bands playing music. And I remember once I was with a girl from the same culture, but I grew up listening to Western music. And when I was walking with her, I heard a certain type of music that is a little similar to Richie Blackmore. So I was like, no, I have to go to this, and attend it. And I was alone there. I was the only, I think, that Arab and Muslim girl. And I enjoyed the music a lot. So I was like doing like this, But every time I opened my eyes and see the people around me, they were looking like. I was like, they were suspecting me. Am I really enjoying, this music, or what would I do? Like slowly, will I explore myself? So after a few minutes, I wanted to, to cool everybody around me, and also to have a kind of a friendly atmosphere. So I started to ask the young people around me, what is the name of the band? Because I like the music. They seem to be similar to Richie Blackmore. Oh, you know Richie Blackmore? Yes. And Ozzy Osbourne. Oh, you like it? And I was like, so yeah, I'm like you. So then it became friendly and
yes.
And in fact, now I get a friend from this, thing that happened that time. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, that's a very good example. And you were able to break down the cultural barriers by having that conversation.
Yes, somehow. But still, it is every time I remember them, I laugh because of.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Yeah. Until exempel.
Okay.
Yes. Go.
This is just something really interesting. Well, no, just the process that we should follow when I was working in a call center and chat center. So it was telecommunication company, AT&T. So we provided support for customers, and I think that's one of the hardest jobs because customer calls and they always have troubles, issues, and you need to manage the problem in that moment and see how you can solve it so the customer can go happy. So it was really interesting for me to learn how you have to handle the tone of voice, how you have to calm down the customer because they were crying, oh, it's Christmas time and they sent me the wrong bike, it was for my kid, and crying. Inside of me was, it's not my fault. They were just the guys at the store.
Yes.
So stuff like that. So you feel so stressful.
Yes.
Especially with calls, but then with chats it's more peaceful because no one is screaming to you, no one is yelling, so you have to follow a flow of different questions, how you can ask the right questions to find out what the customer wants, because sometimes people think that you know what you want.
Yes,
It's like,
exactly.
I want to phone. Yeah, but okay, so I may ask you some questions so I can find the right phone for you. Okay, let's look. Are you interested in any like specific apps or any special model or price or budget or something like that? So it was really good experience for me to learn how to manage a right conversation, how to be polite, how to be like all the things that you have to do in a conversation. So it was really interesting. So now when I text to someone, I just feel like I'm working because, hi, I hope you're having a great weekend. And then it's like, okay, yeah, it sounds like work, but it's like also nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So-
That's a very good example. And again, what we're coming back to is asking questions.
Yeah.
Att man ska hela tiden ställa frågor så att man är säker att man reagerar på rätt sätt och att man bygger upp en positiv historia. That you keep asking questions to make sure you react in the right way. Do you have an example?
I used to work in company in the work conditions maintenance, and my country is very hot. So whenever a customer have a problem in her air conditioner is going bad, so we have like front line and the engineers. So the front line, they have a man who's like very mad, and he was screaming, and they called me that they couldn't calm him down, so I came. So I found the man from the look. I realized that he's on the 50s, something like this, and he's like dressed up very well, and he said, I don't have time. So I came and shake hands, and I told him, come with me to my office. So whenever we get in the office, I bring him a chair, and I didn't sit in my chair, I sit in chair next to him. And he was trying me, and he's, so when I try to communicate with him, I make him feel like he's very important. And I started to say you, and you, and you, and you. And after a while, the problems fell, and he was very calm down.
Yes, yeah, that's also a good example. That sometimes we have to give the other person what they want to hear before they can listen to what we really want to say.
Because he wasn't listening at all.
Yeah, good example. Yeah.
No matter my experience, a little funny history I want to share. One man from England go in America and have job there, and first day he go in the job and go in elevator. I never be in elevator before in London. And the first day I think I have own office, and I go there and see 20 person in some space. They share some space together, and Han sits and have it one other guy close to Han, and Han börjar to run it and miss the gong, something I don't know the right name, and Han asked this kompisar, you have the gong? Men they don't understand samma ord.
Yeah.
Different means.
Yes.
And this man think it was something like this can use for the section. Like a rubber. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And Han asked if you have. Han säger nej. Oh. And again, han säger in the London, actually we have in office. Varför they don't have? Okay, and ask again. Ursäkta, you have, or we have in office? Han säger again, nej, I have home. And han säger, home? The things we have in office, we don't take home in England. We don't do like this. And after what we can do, Han asked another person, and Han with a smile say, nay, we don't have. And Han stand up and say, all the rooms, if you have. And all the rooms are cold, what Han said, and after they ask, which one you take for the dinner tonight to use it.
Yeah. But it's
The word in different countries, the same word means
exactly, yeah. It's a very good example of what we were talking about with språk, language, that sometimes a word in one culture has a completely different meaning in another culture, and we have to be aware of those things. And we often joke, in England, we talk about Americans, we say England and America are divided by the same language. So we think we speak the same language, but we don't, which is even worse, actually, because if we go to a country where we really understand already that the language is different, the culture is different, we're kind of on cultural red alert. We're prepared that this is going to be different and we have to be careful. But when we go to a culture where we think, yeah, people look more or less like us and we're talking more or less the same language, that's when the mistakes are really bad, because we're not thinking.
In Turkey and in Azerbaijan, Turkish is spoken, but different dialects. So there's a very famous story in Turkey as well. One of the Turkish businessmen is going to Azerbaijan, and while the plane is landing off, he hears the announce from the pilot, "We are ready to crash." The crash is land off. He says we are landing off, but when he says we are now crashing, he was all panicked.
Yes. Small language difference, yeah. Any more?
Alltid kommer två saker tillsammans. Språk och kultur. Till exempel jag flyttade från Syrien till Sverige. Första problemet när mina barn går till skolan. De hade många saker om arabisk språk och kultur. Men de ska lära nya saker på skolan. Om kultur, svensk kultur och språk. De alltid lite nervösa börjar givetvis i Sverige. Och de vill inte gå till skolan. De kan inte prata svenska, de kan inte prata så mycket engelska. Men med tid, de lär sakta. De tar bra saker på kultur, på arabiska kultur och på bra saker på svensk kultur. När de pratar flytande svenska språk, de är nog jättenöjda. Och jag är jättenöjd.
Och det är ett jättebra exempel av om man kan ta bra saker från flera kulturer så blir man starkare. Ja, det är ett bra exempel. Och du pratar väldigt bra svenska, jag måste säga. Du själv. Hur länge har du pratat svenska? 4 år. Det är jättebra. Okej, så jag tror vi tar en liten fikapaus. Gömmer sig lite. But if we take the example I gave you before about the English lady that said no to wine in Italy and yes to wine in Sweden. And let's think a little bit about that, because she made a mistake 2 times. But why did she make that mistake? Because she may have understood that there are some cultural differences, but she didn't understand the value differences because they're not written anywhere. You know, when you get in a car from the airport in Italy and go towards town, there isn't a big sign saying, here you should take a glass of wine to show your respect for the food. It doesn't say that. People just somehow know it. And the same in Sweden. There's no sign saying, here you don't drink alcohol at lunchtime, but it's just something that everybody knows. So I think one of the best pieces of advice that I can give to anybody who's trying to understand a new culture is try to find a mentor or a friend in that culture who you can ask those strange questions to without feeling embarrassed or that it's strange. And I was very lucky when I moved to Sweden. I met a Swedish girl who'd lived in Germany. And so she'd gone through that process of being Swedish in Germany and making mistakes in German culture. So she was very kind to me that I could ask her all these questions, you know, like, why is it that Swedes do like this? Or why is it that Swedes say that? And she could answer me in a very helpful way. So think a little bit about who you have in your network that you can ask things and understand the things that are hidden in the values that it doesn't say in any of the leaflets or the books or anything that you get. And I'm just going to give you now an example of values that comes from a company I worked in. And I think it's a good example because it's not about different countries. It's about the different values that can happen in an organization. So when I worked in the publishing business, in the book business, we had 4 different departments. We had the editorial department, redaktionen, as it's called, and their main values were about accuracy and beauty. De placerar ett högsta värde på riktighet och skönhet. Allt skulle vara perfekt. Then we had production. Their main value was keeping everything as cheap as possible. It was the costs. You know, they wanted to print things at a low price. So produktionen hade som högsta värde att det skulle kosta så lite som möjligt. Sen hade vi marknadsföring och deras värderingar var tid till marknaden. Allt skulle gå fort. So the marketing people wanted everything to go fast because it was speed to market. They had to get it out there. And then we had customer service. I was thinking about this when you gave your example, kundtjänst. Deras högsta värde var hur många samtal en produkt genererad. Because as we know, people don't call when they're happy. They just call when they have a complaint. So for customer service, it didn't matter how accurate and beautiful the editorial department thought they'd made something, or how fast the marketing department got it out to customers. If lots of customers were calling, then it was a bad product. So everyone had different values. På svenska? Engelska. Okay, so redaktionen vill ha allting perfekt, fint och perfekt. Produktionen vill ha det till den lägsta möjliga pris. Marknadsföring vill ha det fort. Och kundtjänst vill att kunderna skulle vara nöjda och inte ringa. För att kunder bara ringer när de är missnöjda. Så även om redaktionen tyckte att de hade producerat något perfekt och de var jättenöjda, om det genererade många samtal till kundtjänst så tyckte kundtjänst att det var inte en bra produkt. För de vill inte ha massa samtal. Det blir väldigt stressigt, som du vet. You know how stressful it is with lots of telephone calls. So we had an example one day when somebody in marketing, so marknadsföring, tid till marknad, in marketing who thought everything should go really fast, called to somebody in the editorial department, redaktionen, som tyckte att allt skulle vara perfekt, and asked for some book titles for the coming year. So they just called up and said, give me some book titles for next year. The person in editorial received that som mottagare. De tog emot det från deras perspektiv. Svaret måste vara perfekt. The answer must be perfect. So they spent a week finding out every single book that was going to be produced the next year and making it into a beautiful color-coded Excel spreadsheet. Så det var jättefint vad de gjorde. Perfekt Excel-blad med färger och varenda bok som skulle komma nästa år. Under tiden så i marknadsföringsavdelning är de jätteirriterade och studsar upp och ner. Vad gör de där uppe? Okej? För att de vill ha det så fort som möjligt. They wanted it fast. But they didn't explain. They took it for granted. Because they asked for it through their perspective, we want it fast, and editorial received it from their perspective, it has to be perfect. And when we dug into this argument, we discovered that marknadsföring, de vill bara ha 2 titlar de kunde skriva i text som skulle till tryckeriet dagen efter. So they just wanted a couple of book titles to write in a piece, promotional piece, to send to the print the next day. But everyone communicates based on their eyes. If you look at a company, which values are right or wrong?
All of them are right.
Yeah. Om man tittar på ett företag, alla värderingar är jämlika. All the values are right. A product has to be good quality, otherwise no one will buy it. It has to be a reasonable cost. It has to come out to customers fairly fast, and it shouldn't generate lots of complaints. So everyone's right, but they become wrong when they only see it from their perspective, because then the communication breaks down. So that's just another example that I wanted to share with you before we go into the actual tool that you're going to use. Har vi några frågor? Are there questions? Everyone with me? Yes? Great. Okay. So, what we can do actually is give these out. I didn't want to give them out to you before because I didn't want to distract you, but if you take one and pass back, take one and pass them along. So this is a kind of Swinglish tool. Det är en liten blandning av engelska och svenska, en verktyg. Jag ska prata igenom verktyget, hur man använder det. Och sen kommer ni ha möjligheten att jobba med verktyget för att förbereda en kommunikation som ni ska kommunicera to någon. So I'm going to talk you through the tool, and then you're going to work with it yourself to prepare a piece of communication. It can be about your company if you're starting a company, or it can be about what you have to offer to a potential employer. It can be anything that you want to communicate but you need to prepare for. Okay? So let's start with the first one, purpose. What's the purpose of the communication? Vad är syftet med kommunikationen? We have a tendency when we want to communicate something to communicate everything we know about it, because we want to show how well prepared we are and how clever we are. Vi vill gärna kommunicera allt vi kan om någonting. Men man måste först tänka på vad är syftet med kommunikationen? What's really the purpose of it? Because maybe we don't need to communicate everything. We just need to communicate what's going to meet the purpose. Okay? So varför ska vi säga något? Why are we going to say something in the first place? Why are we there? What are we trying to achieve? What happens if we don't say anything? This is very important in companies, because if you don't say something in companies, the space where you should say something gets filled with people's rumors and talk and ideas. Och om man inte kommunicerar ibland så blir det för mycket plats för rykter och skvaller och massa snack vid kaffemaskinen. Så det är jättebra om ledningsgruppen i ett företag kan kommunicera någonting. So why should we say something?
Just to create friendly atmosphere, working atmosphere.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, receiver. Vem är mottagaren? Vem är det vi ska kommunicera med? Och det kan vara olika personer, det kan vara olika grupper. Vi kanske vill dela upp våra mottagare. We perhaps want to divide up our different receiver groups. So when I worked at the hospital in Lund with doctors, teaching them to communicate, we spent time getting them to define who were their different receiver groups. It could be patients, it could be nurses, it could be relatives to patients, it could be politicians that wanted them to save money, it could be other doctors. So maybe they had 5 or 6 different receiver groups for the same piece of communication. And we had actually a very good example while I was working with the hospital. I had a team of doctors and we were doing a theoretical exercise like this, and then there came the news that there'd been an outbreak of the E. coli bacteria. Vet ni vad det är? E. coli hade kommit till sjukhuset. Så de snabbt behövde förbereda en kommunikationsplan. So they had to quickly create a communication plan och fokusera på vem är det som är berörd. Det är alla besökare till sjukhuset, det är alla leverantörer, det är patienter såklart, anhöriga, det är många olika grupper. So who is going to be affected? What do we want them to know and think and do? And what do we know about them? This is very interesting. What do we know about the receiver? What might their values be? Their culture? What prejudices might they have? What negative history, what might we have to break down? What might their expectations be?
Experience.
Their experience. What sort of language is going to work for them?
Better to know in advance about this person.
Yeah.
Before the meeting.
Yeah.
So the way we address something varies depending on the group we're targeting or addressing.
Yes, yeah. The actual message stays the same, and we'll come to that, but the way that we put it together. So this presentation that I'm showing you now, I can show this presentation to a group of IT professionals, you know, computer guys, and then we talk a lot about encoding and decoding and, you know, use computer language to make it talk to them. Or if I show it to doctors, then I would use different sort of examples, different sorts of language. So we have the same message, but we adapt to who the receiver is. Okay. Then what sort of interaction do we want to have? This is really the channel. Vilken kanal ska vi använda? Vad är bäst? Hur når du dina mottagare? How do you reach your receiver?
First of all, in some way you should introduce your level of qualification just to show that I know this subject, and then raise a question. I have to test, first of all, this person. I raise a question. If the person answers me, I can understand from the level of this, this answer, the level of qualification, I think, if it is my subject.
I think it's what you're saying. Jag vet inte om alla hörde det, men vad vi sa här var att man ska börja med att förklara vem man själv är och varför man är expert i ämnet. Why you're an expert in the subject. I would actually say do the opposite. Ask about your receiver first. Who are they? What are their expectations of the meeting? börja med mottagare. Vem är de? Vad vill de få ut utav mötet? Vad är intressant för dem? Hur mycket kan de redan om ämnet? Så att man inte upprepar saker de redan kan.
Maybe we have to raise the question about the activities, about the experience, about the company they are living.
Mm. Yeah. So you have to decide which is the best way to reach your receiver. Let's assume that it's a face-to-face meeting. Mm-hmm. Then in a way it's easy because you've got voice tone, you've got body language, you've got eye contact. But maybe someone doesn't want to have a meeting. Maybe they want to take it on the phone. Or maybe they want you to send them some information. So we have to think about how do we reach them in the best way. What's the best way to reach our receiver? What's the best channel? Is it phone? Is it email? Is it face-to-face? Is it text message? One of my clients who works at IKEA, she has raised 4 teenage boys. En av mina kunder har uppfostrat 4 tonårspojkar. Och hon sa till mig för länge sedan att jag har förstått att det absolut bästa kanal att nå mina pojkar är text. The best way to reach my boys is to send them a text. Because if I go into their bedroom and say, "Hi, how's your day been? What would you like for dinner?" I get no answer. They just look at me like, "Okay, it's okay, yeah, whatever." She just got this. But if she sends them a text saying, "How was your day? What would you like for dinner?" then she'd get lots of things back and smiley faces and thumbs up or sad faces or hearts or all kinds of things. So she chose the channel that would reach the receiver. So we sometimes have to be a little bit creative. You know, what's the best way to get to the person? I've also learned with some of my clients that there are some clients that really like to plan a long way ahead. So if I'm going to reach them, I need to send them an email, book in a meeting, phone before to confirm the meeting, really plan it. There are other clients where I know that I will only reach them if I do it spontaneously. I have to kind of just be there and bump into them in the corridor. "Oh, by the way, what about this?" That I can reach them. If I try to plan anything with them, it doesn't get planned because they don't want to plan. So it's how do you best reach your receiver? And you have to be the one, if you're the sender, you have to be the one adapting. Om du själv är sändare så måste du anpassa dig till mottagare om du vill nå dem. So you have to have a strategy. Bygga upp en strategi. What kind of communication style? How do you reach your communication goal? And maybe it's in lots of stages. You know, sometimes you see advertising campaigns where they first send a little teaser, they call it. Någon liten sak som först lockar uppmärksamhet. A little thing to get your attention. And then a little bit later on they send a bit more information. And then finally you get the whole thing. They've built a strategy, communication strategy. And then what's your message? Vad är ditt budskap? This is the bit where we often try to make it too complicated because we want to tell everything. But actually, what we know from communication psychology is that people remember best 3 things. That's what people remember. And if you watch politicians or really good speakers talking, they often talk in 3s. Politicians will often talk in 3s, especially, you know, I say we're going to look at healthcare and education and something else, but it's always in 3s. They construct 3 messages because that's what people can remember. The same in big companies, they'll often have 3.
Maybe they provide some clay, take attention of the auditory, then use special voice, just making attention of people, and they can just speak differently, just combine silent moment with a very strong voice.
Yes, yes.
And raise questions which are very close to everyone. For example, how to develop this peace in the world, saying like this, how to win the corruption process, and find the topic which is belong to everyone.
Yes, exactly. But the message, they will. What you notice with good communicators is no matter what question people ask, they have the same answer. They have their 3 messages prepared. So if you see on television a journalist putting a microphone under the nose of a politician, it really doesn't matter what question they ask. The politician will keep repeating the 3 key messages that they've all agreed is what they want the world to hear about what they want to say. So often in business meetings, your receiver might try to kind of lead you off track. They might start asking you things where you feel like, yeah, but I came here to talk about why I'd be really great for this job, or I came here to try to tell them that I've got this really great business idea, and now we're talking about something different. So you have to have your messages very, very clear in your head. They're these 3 messages, and you come back to them. Repeat them. Man upprepar sina nyckelbudskap så att mottagare kan inte slingra sig ur. Man måste hela tiden upprepa vad det är man vill säga. Och det ska vara så enkelt som möjligt. 3 nyckelbudskap. Okay, so now you're going to get to do this yourself. So I'm going to suggest actually again that you work in 2s so that you've got someone to discuss with, but you're each going to do your own communication plan. Okay? And it can be for any situation. It can be for, as I said, for an interview for a job, or for a place on a course that you're applying for, or for a business idea you want to sell, or any kind of communication. The point is to practice it. It doesn't really matter what it is. And just go through the whole prism. What's the purpose? Who are my receivers? What interaction would be best for those receivers? I did this last week with a group at IKEA, and there were 2 people who couldn't think of anything business related at all. So they decided to practice this on the subject of pretending that they were politicians who were going to close the local daycare centre. Yes, controversial. But it was actually very good fun because, you know, their purpose was to somehow convince everybody that closing the daycare centre was a good idea. So that was their communication challenge. And then their receiver groups, it was parents, it was teachers, it was other members of the community, and even the children. Interaction, first of all, it was a email to everybody, or handed out leaflets to everybody, calling people to a meeting that was face-to-face where they explained. So they built up a strategy around all these different steps, and then they had their key messages, which were, this is for the good of the community, because by closing this daycare we can build one that's even better. And we have to close this one because there's something wrong with the building. I can't remember what they came up with, but it was very, very good, very clear example. And it's just a way to practice. Okay?
Could you please tell a bit more about the difference of interaction and strategy?
Yeah, interaction is the actual channels that you're going to use. So you would identify, okay, it's email, it's text, it's whatever. Your strategy is which order you're going to use those things in, how you're going to plan the whole process of the communication. And remember, a person can be a communication channel as well. So if we think about this closing the daycare, the politicians also used the teachers as a communication channel. They started with the teachers, so the teachers would be able to communicate to the parents, because the parents are going to trust the teachers much more than they're going to trust the politicians, was how they were thinking. So people can be communication channels as well. Okay, so I'm going to give you 30 minutes to do.
Yeah, for us, we have different focus groups, but the strategy and methods and tools which are going to use are the same. So you can start with.
Okay. Our purpose is to help and support the newcomers to Sweden to integrate to Sweden life, to Swedish society. So our focus group is mostly the immigrants, the refugees, and this is where we are a bit differentiating. I'd like to work more with the expatriates families, the ones who have come to Sweden with their partners, that the partners have the job but the other one does not have. So I want to help them to integrate to society as well, so they can find something to do here.
And my focus is another group, migrants and refugees, and group number 1, and another group number 2 is migrants and refugees with disabilities.
Välkommen att alla är med. Okay, så syftet är att supporta integration, och strukturen här är att båda har lite olika vinklingar. En vill supporta de som kommer till Sverige som kanske har problem med, de är blinda eller någon form av funktionsnedsättningar. Och sen en andra perspektiv, den andra mottagande grupp är kanske de som kommer som partners till någon som har ett jobb, men att hjälpa dem att integrera i samhället.
So our receivers are, for me, the expatriates, the expat families. So maybe the companies, the international companies, the human resources groups are working in those companies, or maybe international schools, universities where we have also international students. So the receivers are mostly that who would like to have a job or would like to have a life in Sweden.
And the way of interaction which I'm going to use is, first of all, social media, because it's fast and not expensive and effective, I think. Develop different presentations, interviews in local newspapers, in libraries. Visits of different organizations, business centers, business companies, face-to-face meetings with those who have contact maybe financial resources or place where we can organize meetings. And of course, we think that the word of mouth also should work for us. Mm-hmm. And we are going to invite all our friends as well to volunteer with us.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we want to reach more people as much as possible, our strategy should be that we are more common, we are more out, we are more talking to other people. So that's what media is very important, but association with the government and non-governmental associations are also very important, like ARMY, like SFE, like the Mätningsföreningar. So we need to be communicated with many people as possible. So it's also important, maybe, or essential to have some seminars in the libraries. Instead of bibliothek, there are lots of seminars that people talk about themselves, that they introduce themselves. It will be also important, I think.
Så de har tänkt ut hur ska de nå fram till internationella personer. och att det blir social media som är ett väldigt lätt och billigt sätt, men också att komma ut så mycket som möjligt. Internationella skolor, bibliotek, alla möjliga ställen att man kan göra föreläsningar eller seminarier för att få fram budskap till så många som möjligt.
Since this topic is highly related, and there are so many organizations which are working to help newcomers to Sweden, so our company should be unique and different. So we focus in this way on the concept of time. So we provide services we are going to provide services in different languages. Yeah, we are going to develop the page with frequently asked questions, also in different languages. Yeah, we are going to organize, let's say, clinics, legal or service clinics with invitation graduated students just to practice it, to give answers for the hot questions from newcomers, and by this way to train, to give them practice, to train their knowledge and skills. We also
Så jag vill bara säga vad de har tänkt här, ni är jätteduktiga, det är jättebra. Jag tänker på, det är många som vill hjälpa de som kommer från andra länder, men hur kan de vara annorlunda? Och det är att ha väldigt mycket information på många olika språk och så engagera specialister som advokat och andra professionella personer för att ge råd och ha frequently asked questions, frågor som ofta ställs, så att det är lätt att hitta informationen.
And the messages we want to deliver is, first, I think you're not alone because you are new here and you are away from your network, but you're not alone. So there's us here as well. So you are important and you are needed.
Jättebra. Så man är inte ensam, man är viktig och man är behövd. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Great. Okay. Okay, would you like to do yours next?
Okay, my purpose is to own a shop in Lund where everyone could shop both Swedish and African. I will sell African food extensions, cream, but my main target will be Africans. And my strategy is I will open a Facebook page, also give out flyers to some of my friends, and contact my friends. I have their phone numbers, like I can also call them and tell them I have a shop already in Lund. Maybe you could tell a friend. And my receivers. I will have a unique way to attend to my customers. My good will be affordable. I will have a quality product to offer to my receivers. So these are the three things that will come
Yeah. Very good. Så nyckelbudskapet är att vi kommer att ha saker som är till bra priser och unika saker som man kan inte hitta någon annanstans. Och sen att du ska använda så många olika kanaler som möjligt. Word of mouth kanaler. Att prata med andra, ringa till andra.
Also Facebook.
Yeah.
And give out some flyers that they can bring up to. So that would be my strategy. Thank you.
Okay, who would like to go next?
Okay, mine is something really Well, it's an idea that I want, and I want to get this. The purpose is to find a job in marketing in Sweden, in my field. The receiver will be companies and friends, and interaction through emails, social media, social meetings, interviews. The strategy, find the best company that fits my needs, talk about my experience, work experience and skills that I have, and convince them why they should choose me in order to be part of the team. And the message will be that with my job, the company will achieve its goals, and I will make it more successfully in order to make the difference in the market.
Så syftet är att söka ett jobb i området som hon har jobbat i tidigare. Och hon vill försöka få mottagaren att förstå att hon kan verkligen göra skillnaden i ett företag med den erfarenhet som hon har. Ja. Tack. Would you like to go next? Who'd like to go next? Would you like to go next?
The purpose is to make I want to make a documentary to be shown on the Swedish TV channels that can have the purpose to say, yes, the Swedish government is trying to facilitate integration and they're spending a lot. They're doing they are establishing organizations, systems, companies, and they are doing kind of like referral system. Still, there is some gaps in helping the refugees and the newcomers to get employment in Sweden.
Så hon vill göra en film, en dokumentär, att få på TV, som förklarar att Sverige gör väldigt mycket, men att det finns några glapp i vad de gör, att det kan bli bättre.
And the purpose also is to say that there is a gap in the methodology in facilitating getting a job, and we can give examples of this from the society. The receiver, in the proposal that I'm writing, is a key person, a citizen. He could be or she could be originally Swedish or someone who has come to this country and feel belonging also and want to also contribute to the country and start a life and to go on here. So it is the common thing about the receivers is those people who have the feeling of keenness and the willingness to improve the country in a better way.
Så mottagargruppen kan vara svenskar eller icke-svenskar, men de måste ha drivkraft för att förbättra situationen, engagera i det här.
And also it is also kind of like the targeted group are those who are like have an idea of that these newcomers that are depending on the taxes that we are paying, who should go for healthcare or building or whatever, but they are like ending up in social. They came to be ending up and not working and only staying at home and depending on social service.
Yeah. Så att få alla att förstå att det är i allas intresse att få alla som kommer hit att jobba. För att det bidrar med någonting till samhället.
So the targeted group is both a key person from Sweden and also it is in general key person from those who are with liberal mentality and those also with no, we don't want refugees anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Så försöka få med de som är emot och hjälpa dem att engagera och förstå.
The interaction can be arguments or interviews with different people from different sectors.
I filmen.
Yeah.
Att i filmen det ska bli diskussioner.
Yeah. And maybe like a storytelling of different personalities from maybe older immigrants and also newer immigrants who came to the country. The strategy could be interviews with successful examples, and we have a lot. And we could also enhance this with statistics, for example, about the well-educated persons who came, but still unable to, to be on the right track to get a job.
Så strategin är att visa med levande exempel, de som har lyckats och de som inte har lyckats.
The message is to break the ice between the immigrants and also the older settlers and also the Swedes. And to open channels of communication and understanding and giving a hand for employment. Because and feeling the, and also for the immigrants, to give them a feeling that you belong to this country. So start acting like one of these citizens also.
Bra. Jag vet inte hur man översätter break the ice. Slå igenom. Att komma igenom en barriär.
Preparing is to to talk to persons who are willing to give interviews and talk, and maybe we can spotlight some of the cultural aspects of different people, and I personally have really good experiences. I was really in the camp with many Swedes who used to come to us, and they are my best friends now. And they need me to keep them updated if I'm doing well or not. But I have really good relation with them because they initiated to come to us, and I also try to accept that and also to to be with them also. So it's a tango is it takes two.
I don't know how to translate that. I think everyone understands. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Första mål för mig mina familjer, sen min framtiden. Jag tänker alltid vad ska jag göra på framtiden, vilket bästa jobb för mig. Jag har butik av mitt hemland, men jag jobbar inte. Men min intresse är artmedicin och frisör. Jag jobbar med båda den jobb. Först när jag flyttade till Sverige, först lära många saker om samhället och studera svenska bra. När jag tänker öppna eget salon eller eget företag, först göra kontakt med kunden eller stora företag för där bra information. Ja. Och skaffa bästa tips för mig.
So she wants to start her own hairdressing salon, and is going to start with trying to use as much advice and experience from different companies to help with that.
Yeah. Jag försöker att göra kontakt alltid med människor. Jag gillar jättemycket jobba med kvinnor i många kulturer. Jag tror när jag jobbar frisör, jag träffar alltid många människor. Jag tror den bästa jobb för mig.
So the best job is to work with people, to work with women from lots of different cultures.
Men första message för mig, måste jag är nöjd för min jobb.
Yes, okay. So key message is I like my job. That's a good one. Yeah.
Sen message för alla kunder de jobbar med mig. Jag jättekul när jag jobbar bra.
That do complimentary vad du gör. Yeah, that she's good at what she does. Great. No, so what I was saying was that when I do this in companies, it does take them usually much longer time to come so far as you've come. Så när jag gör detta i företag, det tar längre tid än vad ni har tagit. Så ni har varit jätteduktiga. Done a really good job. So we've reached the end of our time together here today. But I want to leave you with my 3 messages. Okay, I have 3 messages for you. The first one is, when it comes to communication, don't take anything for granted. Make sure you keep asking questions. Okay, när det gäller kommunikation, ta ingenting för givet. Hela tiden ställa frågor. Om du är sändare eller om du är mottagare. Det ska vara en konstant dialog för att försäkra att alla förstår varandra. So it has to be a constant dialogue to make sure we all understand. So that was the first one. Don't take anything for granted. Number 2, don't give up. Remember how good you are to have come this far and keep trying. Ge inte upp. Kom ihåg hela tiden hur duktiga ni är för att ni har kommit så långt som ni har kommit. Och fortsätta. And then the third one is, do ask for help. Be om hjälp. Det finns verktyg här som ni kan använda, som ni kan sitta och jobba med 2 och 2. There's a tool here that you can use. You can sit and work together with your friends and your colleagues. Make use of each other. Make use of all the people who want to help.
I didn't get message number 2.
Sorry, which one?
Message number 2.
Message number 2. Don't give up. Remember how good you are. Don't give up. Okay, so it's don't take anything for granted, don't give up, and do ask for help. So that was all I wanted to say to you now. What I'd like us to do is just close the formal part of the session, and then just you feel free to ask questions of me or each other, and then I think you've got an exciting cultural event to go to. So thank you very much for your attention today. Thank you.
Thank you for the books as well.
Ah, you're welcome. Yeah. Has everyone got a book? Let's see. Du vill ha det på svenska? Do you want?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, which one? English or Swedish?
English.
English.
Can I get to?
Thank you.
Thank you.
English.
There we go.
Studied psychology as well.
Yes, communication psychology.
So is it a program that is together, or?
Yes, it really looks at the psychology of communication in relation to the media, how the media can manipulate, good or bad, with communication, corporate communication, how communication works in companies, and then communication in negotiation, situations. So it's really the psychology that lies behind all those different sorts of communication.
It's a very interesting subject.
It is, yeah. Yeah. So it can be applied in advertising or in media, in change management, many different ways. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or?
Några fler frågor till Debbie?
Några fler frågor? No? Can I turn myself off now?
Ja.